and I started getting clients. And my goal was not to build a company. My goal was survival. My goal was to be at home with my kids and to be able to pay our bills.
Welcome. I'm John Martinka, and this is the Getting the Deal Done podcast. And my special guest today is Jenny Groberg. She's in Utah, and she is a financial whiz, and we're going to delve into that today. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Let's start with, tell us about your journey, how you got to be where you are with the company of really fractional accounting and bookkeeper people throughout the country. So give us the story.
Okay, so I was a CFO in Utah. My husband got accepted to medical school, and because my brother was one of the owners, kind of convinced them to let me continue that role as CFO from Iowa. And this was before remote work was a thing, so 17 years ago in 2008. And I never would foresee that, or I couldn't have foreseen that things could happen. And the business ended up getting dissolved because of patent lawsuits, and I was out of work. And as we exited school, we had $250,000 of student loans. My husband's last year of school, he was doing rotations across the country, and we couldn't afford my expenses and his expenses. So I moved back to Utah with my 2 kids and lived in my parents' home. And I had to work. Again, remote work wasn't a thing, and I was kind of frantic. I had no childcare options. My parents both worked. And so I began consulting. And then I had business owners say, "Hey, Jenny, this just makes more sense if you take care of this than for me to." And I started getting clients. And my goal was not to build a company. My goal was survival. My goal was to be at home with my kids and to be able to pay our bills. So that is how it began. And it's much bigger than I could have ever anticipated.
So that goes with the line, necessity spurs entrepreneurship. And
Yeah.
it just grew from there.
It's like compounding interest. You know, you think you're not going to make a lot of traction, and you show up and you do all these little appointments and you do the grind and you keep your head down. And then all of a sudden it's that hockey stick growth. And before you know it, those little gains add up to be really big gains. And some of my clients that were really little initially, they're really big now. One client called me and he said, "Jenny, my financials are a complete mess. I'm getting paid. I'm the CEO. I'm getting paid based on net income, and I have no idea what the actual net income is. I have all these payroll filings coming in that are incorrect. They have probably 5 or 6 different entities. I need your help to unwind this." And so I went in office and it took months to get the balance sheet clean, to get the P&L accurate, and to get all the filings corrected. And over the course of 15 years, I saw him grow from that little warehouse space in Salt Lake to just recently they sold for about $950 million. And for a long time, he was one of my biggest clients. And when they sold the first time for $30 million, the CFO called me and said, "You're fired. I'm the CFO now." And I said, "Okay, we will help you train, we'll help offload the work." And the CEO said, "What are you doing? You need them." And I thought the transition would be maybe a 6-month period. And I thought, okay, I've got to get more work because they're 80% of my business. And what I thought would be a 6-month transition ended up being, another 10 years worth of relationships, because they kept hiring internal accountants and staff, but they kept acquiring more and more businesses. So they would offload their extra work to us as a flex accounting department. So it's pretty cool to see over time how those relationships grow and develop and make all the difference.
So talk about a flex accounting department. What size companies you work with? What roles do your people play from, minimal? Is it minimal part-time? Is it some of them full-time? Anything in between? give us what are those assignments you get?
That's a good question. So I have on staff, I have data entry, I have bookkeepers, I have accountants, and I have CPAs. And so if a company would like to hire book smarts, they would have the ability to have a team assigned to their account. So they would have data entry, bookkeepers, and they would have CPA level oversight, but they're only paying for the pieces that they need. So instead of hiring a full-time controller or a full-time bookkeeper and paying for their training and their taxes and their benefits, they pay us just for the hours that they need. And so it ends up being a lot cheaper for them, but then they have this brain trust of women to help them. And so I found kind of the sweet spot is if a company's generating about $500,000 up to 5 million, but that's not, a hard line. It just depends on if the company feels like they need to bring it in-house. But I have a lot of family office and a lot of multi-million dollar companies that don't want the headache of having internal staff and they want to keep it outsourced. I found that if a company's generating about $500,000, they can see the need to hire help. A lot of times business owners feel like they need to do everything and they want to do everything and they don't understand that they will grow and make more money if their eye is on sales and their business rather than their accounting. And so again, it's not a hard line that you have to be generating 500,000 to hire us. I just feel like that's when business owners recognize, okay, I can't do this by myself. I can afford to outsource it. But really, I don't think a business owner can afford not to outsource or not to have accounting help because if they don't have good numbers, they can't run their business and they can't make strategic decisions.
Well, let's talk about that. What the numbers they need to make strategic decisions. But before, a couple things. So your people are all remote
Mhm.
and based across the country.
I didn't have remote work available to me. And so it is a very intentional decision to hire women and to offer remote work to them. So, not to say all of them are mothers, but they are all women. And a lot of I'm tapping into a really educated workforce that may not otherwise be employed. And they can multitask. They have a high attention to detail. They care about relationships. And a lot of times business owners want that attention. They want to be able to call and get somebody on the first ring or have people that will give them attention. And so that's really what differentiates us, especially in a male dominated field where we really stand out. But I have 40 women on staff and we service close to 400 companies across the United States. I would say maybe 15 are in Utah and 25 are outside of Utah, but we are not limited um, by location or by jobs. We can help small companies, we can help large companies. We have medical offices and e-commerce and family office and franchises and everything in between.
So we digress there. You were going to talk about some of the things your people can do to help the owners know what's going on in their business and what they look for to see where do I need to fix something, what's going really well. Talk about that.
Okay. So I did a piece with Entrepreneur Magazine about the final five. And in it, I talked about how business owners need to look at five reports the last 5 minutes of their day. And if they can rely on their financials, they'll be able to direct their company based on emotion. Rather than emotion, they can make decisions based on data. And so my staff is able to give them accurate information, accurate financials on a day-to-day basis or a weekly business or sorry, my staff can help them have accurate financial data on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis that the business owners can rely on to make decisions. And so my staff, will take care of the data entry and they'll make sure their financials are correct. And then the business owners can look at their financials and say, these are the customers that are generating 80% of my business. This is where I need to focus. And this is what my AR looks like. And this is how I need to get my receivables coming in. Or these clients have not paid me. I need to focus on that so I can pay my accounts payable. So our staff is able to help the business owners make good decisions that are timely. If you have payroll that's increasing faster than perhaps your sales, that's an outlier. And we can help the business owner identify we have um, we have payroll that's increasing. So we need to either increase our prices, or perhaps we need to hire more people, or perhaps we need to adjust their pay. So it's important that as the market moves, the data will tell you that. The data will tell you if your cost of goods is rising, but your prices are not. So it helps them pivot before they run out of money or they're replaced in the market through competition.
Okay. So what you're talking about is a lot more than financial statements. It's management reports and, uh, the KPIs.
Yeah. So we definitely simplify KPIs for the business owner. Instead of giving them ratios, and we just help them say, okay, look, your cost of goods is too high. Different industries have different markers. I have a florist, and the markup on a flower is 3 times, but a shoe company, it's going to be 2 times. And so we help them identify. I remember sitting at this florist office, and I could see her making the most incredible bouquet of flowers. And she had a pretty good gauge on how many flowers, but she's packing them in there. And then she grabs all this really expensive ribbon, and she's tying the ribbon around. And then she thinks, oh, it needs a little bit more. So she adds more. And I'm watching her thinking, she has no idea the cost of that. She's making it look beautiful. But I can see on my end that her revenue is not helping her have that margin that she needs between her revenue and her cost of goods. And so, I would help her say, look at that and say, hey, you're putting too much ribbon on, or there's too many flowers, and you're losing money here. And it's hard, as a business owner, you want to provide the best product, but it's important that you stay profitable. And so we help the business owners do that.
Yeah, it goes back about the time you started, excuse me, remote work. I did a project with a company, and it shifted. I was working with a friend who was a CFO type, and yeah, I mean, he put in a series of management reports for this company, and it was my first real experience firsthand with them. And the one I remember the most was him looking at working with their salespeople on their sales pipeline, and being able to show, look, you have all this business in the next 2 months, and you've got all this business 5 months from now, but you have a 2-month gap. And instead of just go generate business wherever it comes, you concentrate on this. That management report really helped that company.
Yeah. And if you don't have a professional helping you, you're so worried about putting out the fire that's closest to you or in your face, and you're not planning ahead, like you said, for that 2-month gap that you can see through those reports.
Yeah. So let's talk about delegation. That's one of your strengths.
It is, but it has been because I've been forced to do that. It's not because I have a mentor or I think, oh, I want to delegate. It's because I have been forced through life to delegate, and I can now understand the importance of that. And those are the unlocks. I did a piece with Entrepreneur. They did a magazine called $1 Million Unlocks. And what is it that helped push you to that $1 million mark?
Mm-hmm.
And, early in my career, I have 3 little kids. I'm staying up till 2 a.m. every night working, because that is when I would work, is in the evening when they were asleep. And I got to the point where I thought, I cannot sustain this. This is too difficult. I'm not sleeping. And then I'd get up in the middle of the night with my baby. And I thought my only option was to sell. And I didn't understand or have the experience to recognize that I could hire help. And I asked family and friends about selling it. And I think I was literally generating $30,000 a year grossing. And for me, that was great. That was the difference between making it or not making it. But I realized that I couldn't sustain it. And the sell didn't work, and I hired my first employee. And I didn't have full-time work for her, but I said, I'm just going to teach you how to do everything, and I just need to offload this. And then that freed me up to go get more work. And as I got more work, I could pass off more to her. So that was a really big unlock for growth. I would say the second period in my business was when I got hurt. I got a traumatic brain injury. It was really dumb. I fell off my bathroom counter. I jumped up to grab something out of my cupboard. And when I went to go hop off the counter, I slipped and I just did a dead fall onto the floor and I hit the back of my head. And it was an absolutely catastrophic injury for me. It felt like I was in a coma for a few years and I couldn't figure out how to braid my daughter's hair. I had no recall. I couldn't remember conversations. I couldn't read. I couldn't look at the computer screen. And after struggling through that for about 2 years, my AR was 90 days behind. I was just in survival mode. And I had a doctor say to me, Jenny, you have to give up 5 things if you're ever going to get better. And I understood that one of those needed to be my business because my family was more important. And I asked my manager at the time, I said, would you like to buy my business? And she said, no, I'm finally pregnant. I want to be a mom. But Emily is your girl. Emily would be a great COO. Maybe she could buy your business. So I approached Emily and said, would you like to buy my business? And that didn't work out. I felt like the offer was lower than what it was valued at. And I asked her if she would want to run the company for me. And I offered her 10% of net income and 10% ownership over 10 years. And she would get 5% at year 5 and 5% at year 10. Because I didn't want her to work for 2 or 3 years and then be out and I'm forced to buy her out. I needed her engagement for at least five years. And she was highly motivated by the profit sharing. And she also had, her children were leaving the home. She was an empty nester. And she had the capacity that I didn't have to bring on more clients. And so she was hungry. Anytime we'd have referrals, she would accept them. We would onboard them. And I would consult with her when she had questions or needed guidance. But I feel like that was the next really big step in our growth. And, we hit 7 figures. And now that I've reemerged in the company, she is continuing to oversee growth and the operations of the company and the staff. And I'm working on PR and doing philanthropy and different things. So it's a really beautiful partnership. And together, I feel like we're able to grow more than we ever could be alone.
So how do you, based in Utah, get clients across the country?
So we have a few referral sources. I have, as we are getting more national attention, I am getting more people reaching out and saying, hey, can you help us? More family office. I have started teaching for BYU Pathways, and they do college programs and courses for underserved countries around the world. And I teach accounting and bookkeeping, and I have about 12 of my staff members that do it with me. And the bulk of our students are in Africa, and we're trying to help them get the skill sets they need to upskill and to get better jobs and to really kind of make a big change for their family and their countries. And so we're doing all of these things, and because of that, I have people reaching out to me saying, I also work with BYU Pathways and I want to make a difference. So let's partner, and I'm going to hire them for marketing, and they're going to use the BYU Pathways students for marketing and then help me grow. And then I'm hoping to be able to hire some of these students that I'm teaching. And so as we grow and as our clients grow, there's more opportunity. I had one client that I started with initially. He was working at a car dealership for his dad. His dad owned the dealership. And then he had an idea to start a salon. And he started the salon. And then as soon as that was cash flowing, then he started a second and a third and a fourth. And then he realized it was too cumbersome to manage 40 women at each salon. So he sold and decided to franchise. And so now we service corporate, we do corporate accounting, but we are also servicing over 100 of his franchisees. And the benefit to him is that he's getting correct royalties on time and he knows he can rely on them. We help him with audits and it helps the franchisees to have accurate data. So it's just really fun how these relationships build over time. And as our clients grow, we grow. And then they refer us to other business owners and it builds. So it takes time. It's not like that, happened all at once. Initially, I would say the majority of my referrals were from QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor. And I would ask for reviews, and business owners would leave me a review after I do a consultation with them. And as a female in a male dominated industry, I would stand out and my team stands out. And people would choose us based on our 5-star reviews. So that really helped me initially. And now we're relying on those relationships to keep us growing and building.
Okay. Can you tell us a story about how you saved the day?
Sure. I have a couple. I have one. I had a client in a retail business, and we could see that their cost of goods was going really high. And we felt like something was off, but the business owner thought that their expenses were just going up. Well, it turns out that they had an employee that was stealing, that was using their Amazon account and purchasing Christmas presents and gifts and all kinds of things. And it's kind of easy to hide when it's on Amazon because the transactions will hit individually and it doesn't always match up exactly. But if you drill down in Amazon, you can eventually see it. So we were able to help identify this retail customer and help them find this fraud. And that was actually really exciting. We had another client who had all kinds of sales tax that wasn't filed. And we worked with the state of Utah to try to get those managed better and to track it and to make sure that they're compliant. It's hard when you have a restaurant that's using cash and the business owner thinks, awesome, I have cash. I'm going to pay my vendors and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and they're not tracking it and they're not paying appropriate sales tax and they get into trouble. So usually my clients come to me when they're in trouble. They have payroll tax filings that are rolling in saying things don't add up. They don't match. They don't match your W-2s. Now you have twice as much in penalties and interest. Or, things like where their financials aren't correct and they can't rely on that for pay or bonuses or loans. And so it's really fun on our end to be able to unwind and clean everything up and provide them with accurate data to stay compliant because I've had a couple of clients that have gone out of business because they're too late and the penalties and interest are too great, or they think, well, it's better off if I just start another business than try to, get everything current. And it's unfortunate because then they're in the same bind. They don't value hiring professionals to help them. And if they did, they could stay ahead of that curve and stay in business. So it creates a lot more work on their end. But one of my clients that hired me 15 or 17 years ago, he just sold for $950 million. And so it's really fun to see their growth and to see all of these huge moves and success. And we grow with them and we celebrate their success because we've helped them, not completely, but we've been a strategic partner to help them. So it's really rewarding. It's not, we feel like, yeah, we're not necessarily saving lives, but we're helping to sustain companies, which give employment, which helps families. So
Great. Hey, I had 2 wrap-up questions, but you spurred a quick question. We have people that your people work with companies who sell in multiple states on all the sales tax nexus and everything else?
Yes, we do.
That's a very important thing. I've seen companies get into trouble. I had one that was selling, and they did some research on it. They owed well over $300,000 because they weren't collecting sales tax where they should have been.
Yeah.
So
And
to
it,
wrap up,
based on the state and entity, we had one company that was doing e-commerce all over the country. And, this is kind of when laws were changing and they were doing a lot of sales on Amazon. And, we kind of helped them unwind and catch up on paying the correct counties for every state because they were behind on that. I had one guy call me and say, I need help with payroll. I have a payroll company. And he lost his house because he had a lot of illegal employees and he wasn't paying payroll taxes on them. And the IRS came and said, sorry, dude, you owe us now not only $350,000 in payroll taxes, but double that with penalties and interest. And he had to sell his house. And he came to me saying, I need help. And I would say my knee-jerk reaction is, oh no. um, I want to make sure that you're compliant. So if you can follow my rules, we will help you. And he was very motivated to be compliant and to make sure that things were in a row. But it's hard to learn those lessons, but it's also really great to say, okay, we can help you and we can fix this.
okay. So what do you like to do when you're not generating business for Book Smarts?
What do I like to do? I love to snow ski with my kids. I went to Canada last year with my son and had the best time skiing the terrain up there. I love to go boating and hiking and anything outdoors. I love to be outside. So, and I have 5 kids and I love to go visit and see all their soccer games and their hockey games and their swim meets. That is what matters most to me.
Okay. And is there anything I didn't ask that you'd like to get out?
I don't think so. I think, if I had one advice for business owners, it's to have the long game in mind. You and I talked about this at the beginning of the show. Record keeping is super important. Compliance, um, making sure that business owners don't make huge moves that could jeopardize their entire company. I had one franchise client who mortgaged his home, took out all of the cash in his IRAs to start a franchise, and the market has changed and it wasn't quite what he thought it would be. And it's left them in a really tough financial situation. So, I would say if you want to start a franchise, keep your day job until it's up and running and don't risk everything. I had another client who mortgaged his house to go all in on a business that he thought was 100% sure deal. And he even kept the inventory at his home. He was a CEO to make sure that the owner didn't cut him out. Well, the owner had a personality conflict and fired him, and he lost his home and has all this inventory. And the owner just decided to go a different direction. So I would just say be really careful, make calculated moves, be conservative, and understand that the market and economy can change at a moment's notice, and you've got to be careful.
Okay. So, Jenny, how do people get hold of you and Book Smarts?
Our website is booksmartspro.com. I'm on LinkedIn, and it's just under Jenny Groberg and Booksmarts Pro. And then on Instagram, you can find us at @booksmartspro and at the Jenny Groberg. So the Jenny Groberg has more personal finance tips, and Booksmarts Pro has a lot of tips for small business and large business owners, how to stay compliant, things that are changing with tax laws. And so we're on LinkedIn and on Instagram.
Okay. So, to wrap up, Jenny Groberg, Book Smarts, booksmartspro.com is the website, and some great information. And believe me, in the buy, sell, M&A world, I see financial statements of every size and shape, and a lot of them are just not the right size and shape. So what you're doing is very valuable. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.